Hi, welcome everybody to the first of our podcasts. I'm Jeff Lecky, the General Manager of Cruise for the House of Travel Group and the Managing Director of cruisedeals.co.nz. I'm over here in New Zealand, and I'd like to introduce to my good friend Alan Suss from Travel Managers.
Hi, Jeff, and hi, everybody outside there listening to us today. I'm Alan Suss. I'm from Travel Managers Australia, and also I'm developing a website which is called the Cruise Club AU, where you'll be able to get the fantastic deals that we're organising, or Jeff's organising, and the world's your oyster for cruising. There's three different types of cruising that's available these days, Jeff, as you well know. There's the Explorer, there's sea cruising, and also river cruising.
Absolutely, and I must admit I'm a fan of all three, although I do have a little nudge towards expedition. I do like to go out in the wilderness every now and again and explore somewhere on the wild side. But hey, look, Alan, we just thought we'd get together and share our thoughts and tips, because there's so much going on in the world of cruise, and there's so much exciting stuff happening that you might not be aware of. So we thought we'd catch up, we'd have a little podcast, and we'd chat together and maybe share some truths, share some insider tips, and see where that takes us.
Well, one of the things that I noticed just on Friday, I did a booking for a client for Celebrity Cruises, which started in Rome and finished in Rome, and this is for October this year. Already a lot of the cabins have gone, so you can't get it booked too early anymore, and people believe if they book later that'll be cheaper for them. In your experience, have you found that the case? If they hold off, they might get it cheaper?
Well, there's two reasons why you'd book early and why you'd book late. So when you book early, you get your choice of the ship. So you can choose the best cabin, you can choose a fare that suits you, and it's all on your terms. If you're happy to wing it and wait till the last minute and see what's available, you might get a better deal, but you'll often find the conditions will be quite different. When you get into those really sharp specials at the last minute, it then becomes cruise line choice. So you can choose a balcony or an ocean view or an inside, but you actually don't know where it's going to be on the ship. It's down to the cruise line. So if you're particular about wanting to be midships, not being near the disco, don't want to be near the laundry, all those sorts of things, then my recommendation really is always to book early, get what you want, where you want, and be happy with it. Just make sure that you have a look around at the time you book in, because unlike airlines, the best deal on a cruise line is not normally by going direct to the cruise line. It's normally by going direct to a cruise specialist, because cruise specialists like Alan and myself,
like us,
exactly, we know the insider deals. So we have a lot of group departures on sailings throughout the year, and on those group departures, that will include things like a cheaper group rate. It might have some other extra perks on it. Plus, sometimes when cruises are full, we've still got rooms available because we've got group allotments if we haven't sold them all. So always talk to a cruise specialist when you're planning a trip, and you might be surprised at the extra perks that you can get.
Yeah, I'm just doing a booking in just the last few days on Seabourn. Around the Kimberleys in Australia, and my client kept saying to me, "Have you got accommodation in Broome? I want to stay at this particular base in Broome." And I knew the place was full, but when I went to the wholesaler that was putting it all together, I knew they had rooms. So we know the tricks. We think we know all the tricks, and we know the people whom to speak to. And also the other thing is, I'm just doing people are not aware, and this is something you can talk about a little bit more about, Jeff, is that I'm writing an article about group travel on cruising. People don't realise you only need a few cabins to get a group discount, and you don't need 80 cabins. You want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, group deals can start as low as 8 passengers on, for instance, like a river cruise or an expedition cruise, and then on an ocean cruise, they usually start around 16 passengers. And what that does, 16 passengers on an ocean cruise will give you 1 free berth. 32 passengers will give you 1 free cabin. And they class a berth as a lower berth. So if you've got mum and dad and the 2 kids in the room, the kids will often be in bunk beds. They're not lower berths. So it's just the 2 adults that count. So think of it as cabins. But definitely come talk to us, because some cruise lines, it starts at 7 cabins. Some cruise lines, it starts at 8. River, it might be just 8 passengers. An expedition, it might be 8 or 9 passengers. But some huge benefits there, certainly for extended family groups or groups of friends traveling together, and then you can share that free berth between yourselves, to reduce the cost of your trip.
But of course, we could help them if they have 6 passengers. we might find another two to help complete the group for them. So talk to us. You never know what we can do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alan, you mentioned celebrity earlier. Well, look, some real hot news in the last week, really, from Celebrity Cruises, right? They have just announced that they're going to be moving into river cruising, and that is so exciting. Celebrity's a fantastic cruise line. They've got their real innovative Edge class ships, and Celebrity Edge Spencer, some are down here in Australia and New Zealand. And what they've pledged is that they will bring those innovations of the Edge class ships into river cruising. And that's super exciting, right? Because when you think about river cruising, everybody's pretty much the same. So Celebrity comes along and does something really different. Can't wait to see what that means.
Well, of course, that's pretty exciting. And they'll have the latest ships on the water. We know that ships are being built all the time, and it's just an amazing thing. I love river cruising. I love the ability that you're on a river, and that it's not too rough. You don't have to worry about seasickness, and you can stop at little towns, whether you're stopping in Vienna or going to, if you go in Vienna, you can go to Demmel's and have a coffee and cake there, stand in line with everybody else, or we go to have all the delicious things, the Wiener Schnitzel or whatever you might want. But you don't probably eat that stuff, do you? You're bigger New Zealander.
Mate, I last year I did the Avalon River Cruise on the Douro on the new Avalon Alegria, and I have to say, in Portugal, Portuguese tarts, oh my gosh, that is just one of the highlights of visiting. Those pastel de nata is always one of the highlights of visiting Portugal. But what I liked about the Douro River was it wasn't sedate at all. It was really active. We went hiking, we went biking, we went kayaking on the river. We went to vineyards. We were hosted by a countessa. Avalon have this contact with a countessa who's got a beautiful vineyard. We went and had morning tea with her. She told us her story. It was absolutely fabulous. And I think that's the thing about river cruising is they have these little extras in there that almost the money can't buy experiences. I know APT take you for afternoon tea with a princess in a castle in Austria. It's
exactly
little nuggets, right? You're trying to do that sort of trip on your own. You couldn't get access to that sort of stuff.
But if you do a group cruise, go as a group. They can put together for just the group a special highlight. So that's something to. Now the thing you were doing in Portugal, going on the Douro, did you like the way the hills, the mountains on both sides with all the vineyards up there? It was just a fantastic sight.
Oh, the Douro's so different, isn't it? And I think that's the thing is when you start river cruising, every river has its own personality. Every region has its own personality. I love the Douro because you're cruising up the Douro River Valley. So it gets narrower and narrower as you get further up. But there's some fabulous locks. The highest lock in Europe is actually on the Douro. And so to be on deck on the ship as you're going up in the lock, it's quite spectacular.
Did you stay any time in Lisbon at all?
I love Lisbon. Yes, I did. And also Porto. There is the most amazing bookshop in Porto.
Well, can I tell you what it's called?
Yeah, you can tell me the name. Yeah.
It's the Harry Potter bookshop.
Hey,
everybody goes there.
But absolutely, it's where J.K. Rowling was inspired to come up with the staircases in Hogwarts. But do you know what the trick is? Because the queues for that bookshop can be 2 hours long. Do you know what the trick is? You go onto the bookshop's website or app before you visit. You purchase a book for €6. And you skip the line. You go straight to the front of the line. You don't have to queue.
Oh, really? Oh.
And it costs you $6, but you get a book. And they've got a huge choice of books, and they are in English. So that, all classic books in there. So basically, we used our secret tip. We pre-purchased our book. We got to the bookshop. The queue was an hour and a half long. We just went straight to the front of the line and we said, "We've come to pick up our book." And he went, "In you go." Absolutely fabulous. So those kind of little tips are the sort of thing that you really need to talk to a really good travel advisor, and sort of like Alan or my team, and we can definitely steer you around those.
Not everybody knows that.
No.
Next door, you're going to go and buy a ticket for €2 or €3, whereas if you go and buy the book for €6, you save money.
And
It's just
saving
unbelievable.
time, right? Saving time. I mean, Portugal, I love it. And you said you don't spend any time in Lisbon. I've spent a lot of time in Lisbon over the years. I love it. Lisbon as a cruise port is pretty special because where the ships berth, you can walk into the old town of Lisbon from the ship. It's like 10-15 minutes. It's really, you're just straight into the old town. It's uncrowded. It's quite the opposite of, say, Barcelona, for instance. It's an open air cruise port, so it's all built for the climate. I just love it. And the city itself, you can get around on the trams. There's so much to see around Lisbon. And for foodies, oh my gosh, that food in Lisbon is amazing.
What I liked in Lisbon was that a lot of the streets and laneways, you couldn't get a car down there. You can't even get a bicycle down there because they put the tables, the chairs, the whole restaurant goes out into the street. And I'm thinking, and that is absolutely amazing. We have something like that in Melbourne and one or two streets in Melbourne, but in Lisbon it's just a habit. And then there's two parts of Lisbon. There's the one side, and then it's the other side. And in Porto, yeah, there's the other side of Porto. You know that the what do they call the other side of Porto? There's Porto on one side, and there's whatever the other side is called. And I've just forgotten. It's where all the sherry
Oh, yes.
places are.
Yes.
Did you go to the sherry places?
Oh, yes, yes. You have to do that. You have to do the sherry tasting.
What was the oldest bottle you saw in in one of those shops?
Oh, I can't remember, but what I do remember was that the actual sherry factories is the wrong word, but that where they make the sherry, they're the old streets of Porto, and they put a roof on them, and so the actual where you walk in, it's hundreds of years old, and all these
Exactly.
big casks of sherry and port wine and that are all in there. It's pretty spectacular. It's a great little town, Porto, and getting around like Lisbon to Porto. People think they need to fly everywhere. No, when you're in Portugal, catch the train. The
That's
train from Lisbon to Porto is super scenic. It's pretty reasonable, and it's a really nice, stress-free journey. Don't mess around in airports in countries like that. Take the train. It's much better.
The train's only a couple of hours between the two cities anyway.
And yeah, and it's super scenic, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I did a back roads tour through there, so I've done a tour, and that was really good. It was like 10 days or something or other. Did you get a lot of exercise walking around Lisbon and Porto? I mean, is that hilly? Is that hilly? Oh my
Yeah.
God!
Yeah, it does. I mean, you do need to prepare a little bit when you head off on your holidays, don't you? Do a little bit of walking before you go. But that's the good thing, and that's what I like about cruising. I find I do so many steps when I'm on a cruise that it kind of works off that overindulgence on board of all that amazing food and all those culinary and dining experiences. So I was in the Med last year with my mom, actually. We did a seaborne cruise from Dubrovnik through to Athens, and she's in her 80s, and but we were averaging about 15,000 steps a day, and you don't realize you're just out and about, you're just exploring, and it was all at a leisurely pace. And so we'd get back at night, we go, oh, I did 15,000 steps today. I'm like, it didn't feel like it, but you're just out there and you're enjoying it and you're exploring, and you're getting a good bit of exercise at the same time.
Just one other thing about Portugal. Did you like the music, Fado?
Not my thing.
My thing, but it was my thing. I loved Fado. It was fantastic.
You did?
Yeah.
I got told off at a Fado because I talk far too much, and the waiter came over to me and went, "You're not allowed to talk during Fado. It's you have to just listen." And it was yeah, I get it. It was very interesting, but possibly not my thing.
When the most famous singer died, I can't remember which year it was declared a public holiday. The most famous Fado singer was declared a public holiday. The president turned up. Everybody just turned up for this woman's funeral.
It is incredible. I mean, even if I can't speak Portuguese, but the emotion in those Fado speakers' language when they're singing, you can feel the emotion. I have no idea what they were singing about, but you could totally feel the emotion in their voice, and it's pretty special. We went to to a fado dinner. So it was, a typical Portuguese food down in a cellar in the old town in Lisbon, and the fado singers were on. So I do recommend it. It's but like everything, suits some people and not others.
And how did you like the cod? The Portuguese say they love cod. There's 150 recipes for cod, and they love cod. And
they do.
One guy said to me, I said, "Do you like cod?" He says, "I'm Portuguese. Of course I like cod."
So I was into bacalhau is salted cod.
That's
and
right.
I was introduced to that as a child because my father loved bacalhau, and I did a cooking class in Lisbon, and I learned how to do the bacalhau, and how to cook pastel de nata. That's something else I would really recommend if you're ever in an overseas city and you get an opportunity to do a cooking tour or a cooking class with a local. Absolutely do it, because
absolutely
cooking the bacalhau and making the pastel de nata and then sitting down afterwards, you're all cooked together. There's lots of conversation, lots of laughs. You sit down afterwards, you have a shared meal together, and it's a real highlight of the trip.
Yeah. Also, did you ever queue for Portuguese tarts at all?
Well, I know a few places in Lisbon.
So, well, I was intrigued. I was intrigued. There is a place which is not quite in Lisbon. It's further down the road, sort of thing. And there's a line all the time waiting for Portuguese tarts. But there was not very far from where the ship is. There's a place where you can go and get all sorts of food. And there was one place that was cooking Portuguese tarts, and every time they brought out the Portuguese tarts, they would go in like 2 or 3 minutes. It was just unbelievable watching this happen all the time.
Oh, look, man, it is one of the highlights. Before I'd even been to Portugal, a friend of mine said, "Oh, you're going to love pastel de nata," and yeah, okay. Anyway, I know when I go now, I'm one of those people right down there in the queue. I think the one you're referring to is the place that originally created them, and it's next to the cathedral in Lisbon, and there's always a queue. There's always a huge queue there, but yeah, these are the things you need to do, right? It's all part of it. And I mean, in Lisbon as well, there's a famous street called Pink Street, where the tar seal is all painted pink, and that's a nighttime area. There's lots of bars, there's lots of outside cafes and restaurants as well. That's quite quirky area. It's definitely worth a visit. Remember, the Portuguese very much operate on Mediterranean time, so they don't come out till late. And they stay out late, so that allow yourself a couple of extra nights to experience the nighttime as well in Lisbon, I think.
That's true. But Lisbon is one of those. But the beauty about Lisbon, it's not as expensive as the rest of Europe.
Great value.
And anything leather, they're very good at leather, is seriously cheap relatively to the rest of the world.
Yeah,
even Australia, New Zealand.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. I don't know, I love it. It's a great destination. I've been down to the Algarve as well in Portugal. So if you like a bit of beach and you like a bit of golf, there's plenty to do down there. It's one of those regions that people don't initially think about when they're planning a Europe trip. They forget about Portugal, but it's always one of the highlights every time we've ever been. So I'd highly recommend it. And some interesting ways of getting into Portugal, so that you've got from Australia and New Zealand, you've got the likes of Qatar and Emirates who fly directly into Lisbon, but then you've also got airlines like Turkish Airlines who fly direct now out of Sydney and Melbourne, just with one connection over Istanbul straight into Lisbon. They fly into Porto as well. They fly actually to more destinations worldwide than any other airline. So that's and some great fares, particularly in business class. And I was fortunate to fly them a few times last year, and I have to say, one of my favourites, because we're on the subject of food, I have to say I flew a long-haul sector on Turkish in business class last year, and the chefs come out in the big Super Mario hat when you get on board, and they hand you the a la carte menu, and they say, you tell us what you would like and when you would like it. And on the menu was Eggs Benedict, and I thought, I cannot believe you can get proper Eggs Benedict on a plane. So I have to order that. I have to tell you, that was one of the best Egg Benedicts I've ever eaten, and it was cooked on a plane at 23,000 feet. So yeah, have a think about them. It's a nice little option of an airline when you're looking at a trip to Europe.
The only can we say there's a little downside? You go to the airport in Istanbul. It's one of the biggest airports I've ever been in. We were sitting having something to eat or something or other. And I said to my son, and this was only in October last year, I said, hey, hang on, we better start getting to the gate because it's going to take us half an hour just to walk to the gate. And he's a fast walker. He said, no, don't worry. I said, no, I think we'll better not take a risk. So we started walking, and as fast as he wasn't quicker than the half hour.
It is a massive airport, isn't it? It really is. And I think that's it's an airport you don't think of. You always think that London Heathrow or Dubai or Los Angeles are these huge airports. Istanbul is incredible. It has a lot of moving walkways, but man, you do have to get a bit of a clip on when you're changing flights.
You do. We better talk a bit more about cruising. Do you have any more tips about cruising at the moment, Jeff?
Well, some other exciting news this week was that the expedition line Ponant have actually just bought a majority share in Aqua. Aqua is a small expedition cruise line who do places like the Amazon. And with the Ponant leadership, it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. And I would imagine that means a bit of expansion on the plans as well. So certainly if you're looking at those other regions like Vietnam or the Amazon, or even in Africa, they've got opportunities there as well.
This morning I had to make I made a booking with APT, and they've taken over Seabourn to do a few cruises. So this morning I'm talking to one of their people in New Zealand, because I rang too early, obviously, and I'm just amazed. People think that cruising is only the cruise lines themselves, but there are wholesalers that are taking over whole ships and creating the opportunity of people selling on them as well. I know we don't use APT in Fastbook, but that's handy to know if people didn't know about it.
Oh no, I mean APT have long done charters. I actually took a group last year to Antarctica on an APT charter on board Ponant. And so the main difference when you're looking at that type of operation, on board it was Aussies and Kiwis. Because APT had chartered the whole ship, so it was only really Aussies and Kiwis on board. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just to be aware of that. Depending on who's chartered the ship and where they're from, will determine what the mix of passengers are on board. So there's a number of European wholesalers who charter river cruise ships, and you'll sometimes see them advertising quite low prices. But depending on the name of the European wholesaler and where they're domiciled, will determine who else you're on board with. So if you want to travel with, let's say Crossy, for instance, the French river cruise line, they sell predominantly to the French market. Cruisamundo sell mostly to the Spanish market. Arosa is the German market. So if you're traveling with a non-Aussie Kiwi-based brand, then you just need to be aware that you will be traveling with more of an international audience, and so that means different languages on board, potentially different languages in the shows or in the presentations as well.
Yeah, well, I went on a Arosa trip last year, I think. 99% of them were German, and I was the one foreigner, and that was fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's it is all about what you're looking for on holiday. I mean, we travel overseas to experience different cultures, don't we? So
exactly.
We don't always want to be always with Americans or always with Australians. Sometimes we'd like to be with more international mix. And I think that same goes for ocean-going ships, right? Certainly when you're in the Med, if you choose a brand such as Princess, then you're predominantly going to be with Americans, Canadians, Aussies and Kiwis, and a good selection of Brits. If you choose a brand like MSC or Costa, then you're mostly going to be, or there's going to be a large proportion of Europeans on board as well, because the likes of MSC and Costa, they have a really interesting process with their ships. Instead of just having one home port, you can get on the ship at any of the ports en route. So say your cruise starts starts in Barcelona and the next stop's Marseille, more people will get on in Marseille. Some people will get off in Marseille. Then the next stop's Genoa, the next stop's Rome and Naples and so on. And so the passenger mix changes every couple of days versus a brand, say like Royal Caribbean, where the cruise ship goes round trip from Barcelona and the same passengers stay with you for the whole 7-10 days.
What I would like to sort of make mention is that last year I had to be on the ship by 4:30. I arrived at 4:31, and they were sort of, luckily enough, I was allowed to get on the ship, but I wasn't getting on in the main gangplank. I had to get on somewhere else. But you know what? Get on. You didn't. So the tip is, if it says 4:30, make sure you're there at 4:29 at the latest. Don't test it. Don't test them.
No, because you don't want to be that pier runner. You really don't. Hey, well, that's been great catching up with you today, Alan. I think that's all we've got time for today, but we've covered a few topics there. Mostly seems to be about the food in Portugal, but that's okay. It's a good place to start.
That's right, it is.
Yeah, we'll look forward to catching up again soon on our next podcast.
Great. Thank you. Thanks very much. It was great talking with you, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Simon.
Take
And
care.
remember, subscribe on the button down below, and you can hear more crazy tips about food in different places of the world and other insider tips.
Or ask us questions and we'll endeavour to give you the answers. We reckon we know what the answers are anyway, but you can test us.
Fabulous.
Take care. Enjoy.
Talk again soon. Bye.
Bye. See ya. Bye.